Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm here with another deck profile. This time it's going to be a Star Dragon World deck featuring the latest version of Zodiac. This version is Awakened Star Deity Dragon Zodiac X. So what makes Zodiac X so good is the fact that you can countercall him on your opponent's turn if you have another Zodiac on your field for basically zero cost. And then when he enters the field, he rests all cards, items included, on my opponent's field for the turn, and all of my opponent's cards on the field can't stand by card effects. So he basically shuts down attacks for an entire turn. And then you could keep calling him over himself to continuously shut down the opponent. He is going to be the buddy of the deck, and as such, we are running 4 of the buddy. He's just a really good Zodiac card, and the deck is definitely more of a control style deck. We definitely need to see him as often as possible, so we run 4 of him. Then we run, in my opinion, the second best Zodiac, Eventual Star Deity Dragon Zodiac Nohva. This Zodiac has the same call cost, and then it has a passive effect where if your flag is Legend World, all cards on your field get plus 3000 power, and if your world is Star Dragon World, all cards on your field get plus 1 crit. Note, it's all cards, not just monsters, so it also includes items. Then he has a counter ability, Gravity Rest. You can discard 2 cards from your hand. If you do, rest all monsters on your opponent's field. He's just a base version to Awakened Zodiac X, so you're not really going to be using the counter ability too much because the deck has a good amount of card draw and a good amount of grave recursion, but the idea is just to play him and then on the opponent's turn just play Star Deity Zodiac X. Most of the time, you're just going to use him as a base form to have 3 crit with Move, Penetrate, and Soul Guard. And then you call over him on your opponent's turn to get additional power, defense, and then it still has Move, Penetrate, Soul Guard, and this version has double attack. So next, we run 4 copies of Hyper Rainbow Vision Shadowscare. This card is absolutely insane because with Zodiac on the field, he's a size 0. So if we have Nohva out, it's a size 0 with 2 crit instead of 1, which is pretty nice. And then with his other ability, basically when you put a soul into a Neo Dragon, you could look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 of them into your gauge, put 1 into your hand, and put the other one either in the drop or the soul of a monster on your field. That's pretty good, and it can only be activated once per turn. Next, we run 2 copies of Biggest Dragonarms Chaos Triple Buster. This card is probably one of the best Dragonarms for Zodiac. So what this card does is you could put it from your hand or field into the soul of a Neo Dragon, and then if this card is in the soul, all monsters on each player's field can't be returned to hand. So it shuts them off from bouncing their own stuff, and it shuts them off from bouncing your stuff, because you're not really going to be bouncing your stuff, so that part doesn't matter. And then he has an additional effect where at the start of each player's attack phase, if this card is in the soul of a monster, destroy up to 1 card. Could be a monster, item, set spell, what be it, but you could destroy up to 1 card on the opponent's field. So the idea is put it in the soul of Zodiac, rest their stuff on their turn, and then blow something up because they can't attack. And then it goes to your turn, and then you continuously blow up stuff between both turns. So he helps pick the board apart, which is pretty strong. We run 4 copies of this Deity Dragonarms. This is a Zodiac-specific Dragonarms, and what it does is all monsters on your opponent's field can't stand by card effects. So Zodiac rests them, this is in the soul, and they can't stand them. And then when it's also in the soul, it has an additional effect where if a opponent's card is rested by a card effect, namely Zodiac's effect, you get to charge 1 and deal 1 damage to the opponent. It's really strong, and if you have multiple of these in the soul, then they do stack. So if you have like 2 of them in the soul, you deal 2 damage and rest their board. It's really good. Next, we run 3 copies of Dragonarms Gaia Fang. So, like other Dragonarms, you put this card from your hand into the soul, and then if it's in the soul of a Neo Dragon, all cards on your field get plus 2,000 power for each card in that card's soul. So, with all of the stacking of the souls and how big Zodiac's soul can get, your other cards can get pretty big, and it also helps clear out really big defenders or cards with really big defensive stats. But on top of that, all abilities of Neo Dragons and cards in its soul can't be nullified if this is in its soul. So it just helps protect your stuff, and it makes it so that your opponent can't stop what you're doing. Next, we run 2 copies of Dragonarms Dragsolar. So mostly we're just going to be using this to recur a Zodiac if it's in our discard. So what this card does more specifically is when this card enters the field, call up to 1 size 3 Neo Dragon or Star, Zodiac counts as both, from your drop zone by paying its call cost on top of this card. And then when a Neo Dragon with this card attacks, you can discard a card and draw a card. So he's really good for helping fish out the deck. He's really good for getting a Zodiac out of the discard in case he just winds up in there and you don't have a Zodiac on your field. So it's just really good for consistency on trying to get Zodiac out. Next, we run 3 copies of Dragoneraser Spare. So basically what this does is if it's in the soul of a Zodiac, when your Zodiac rests the opponent's cards, you basically get a draw card. So it's just there for draw power and consistency, and it's another card to put in the soul. And then it has Cross Knives, so you play it, Cross Knives, and then it goes into the soul of the Zodiac. You rest all the stuff with Zodiac, and then you can draw cards. So for the items, we run 2 Dragon Force style of binds. So the release condition is pretty easy to meet, with it being a Neo Dragon with Zodiac in its name, and it has 2 Dragonarms in its soul. So what this card does is this card can't be destroyed or returned to hand, and its abilities can't be nullified, usual Dragon Force stuff. But then, if you have a monster with Zodiac in its card name on your field, or drop, all cards on your opponent's field can't move and they can't stand during their start phase. So it's really good at comboing with Zodiac to rest their stuff down. If you have Style of Binds out, they basically just can't stand and they just have a very hard time playing because you could just continuously rest stuff due to the difference in the Zodiacs. So it's just a really good card. And then it has Penetrate and Double Attack. So with Nohva, it gets an additional crit, and then with Gaia Fang, it gets additional power, so it can be very hard to stop it from attacking on top of its already high attack stat. Next, for the spells, we run 3 copies of Dragon Force Stab. So this is a really good card because it can be free if we meet its conditions, which are pretty easy to meet. You have a Neo Dragon with 2 or more cards in its soul. Most of the time, because the opponent's not supposed to be able to attack, you're just always going to have Zodiac with a whole bunch of soul. So it's pretty easy to meet. And then you can choose up to 3 cards on the opponent's field. It could be item, it could be monster, it just says cards. And those cards get minus 10,000 power, minus 10,000 defense, and minus 2 crit. So it just helps if they can attack for some reason. It just helps it so that they can't actually do anything when they can attack. Next, we run 2 copies of Dragonarms Factory. So you discard a Dragonarms and draw 2 cards. It's just there for the draw power. We run 2 copies of Starbright Soul. So the call cost is paying a gauge, and then you get 2 options. So you can either search for an item with release condition in its cost, or you could put 2 Dragonarm monsters from your drop zone into your hand. So if you don't have Dragon Force Style of Binds, this helps get Dragon Force Style of Binds, and depending on how your discard zone is looking, you could even use it to add 2 Dragonarms back from your drop to your hand. Next, we run 3 copies of Divine Guidance. So this is a Zodiac-specific defense spell, so if you have a Zodiac on your field, you can nullify the attack, put the top card of your deck into your gauge, and gain 1 life. Next, we run 3 copies of Buddy Block. The deck is a little weak to burn damage, so Buddy Block has the flexibility of keeping you alive if Zodiac's not on the field, and it also can help stop or quell burn damage. So You pay 1 gauge and you choose one of the two. For this turn, the next damage you take is reduced by 3. Could be impacts, could be burn, could be attack. So it's good for that. And then it's also good for if your opponent attacked 4 or more times. They're not supposed to attack, but if they do, then you basically won't take damage from their attacks. So basically you could just, if your Zodiac is gone, they're swinging away, you just play this card and help stop all of the damage, so that way you can start getting back into the game, play a new Zodiac, and continue. Next, we run 3 Starjack Boost. So all this card does is you put the top card of your deck into your gauge and you draw a card. You have to have 7 or more life when you do it, but if your opponent's not supposed to attack, you're not generally going to be taking a whole lot of damage. Next, we run 3 copies of Uninvited Deity Inspector. So you pay 2 life and basically you get to search for a Zodiac and call it by paying its call cost. So it's just basically any Zodiac you need. It could be Zodiac X or Zodiac Nohva. You could even, if you really feel like it, splash in a 3rd Zodiac to kind of toolbox your Zodiacs, but I just didn't really feel like I needed to between X and Nohva. Next, we run 2 copies of Mindfaker. So Mindfaker has 2 abilities. If you have a star monster on your field, nullify all abilities of a monster on your opponent's field. So nullify the abilities is pretty strong. And then if you have a Neo Dragon on your field, you could also put the top card of your drop zone into the soul of a monster. So you either get to nullify the abilities of a monster on your opponent's field, or you could put a Dragonarms from your drop into its soul. So it has the options, it's pretty flexible. Most of the time you're just going to use the star version to just shut down the abilities, so you could just swing in and clear the field. But the option is there in case you need to use it more defensively to get a Dragonarms you need back. Lastly, 2 copies of Lost World, because Lost World's a really good alternate win condition. You stall with Zodiac, you control the board with all of Zodiac's stuff, and then you just pop Lost World, and then you could probably just win between Zodiac and like 2 Lost Vaders. It's just a really good Plan B win condition. So that's it for the main deck. I do have a side deck. Your side deck can look and play differently than mine, but my side deck is just more doubling down on the control elements of the deck. So with that being said, I run 3 copies of Loyalty. Because it's loyalty, it can help stop burn damage. It could put a soul from a monster on the field to the drop zone. Most of the time you're not going to use that. You're either going to use it to stop the burn damage depending on the matchup, or its last ability, which is its most commonly used ability. Basically, when your opponent calls 3 monsters, they can't call anymore. You just use it to stop them from calling a whole bunch of stuff to try to get a good like power play setup going. Then I run 3 copies of Antimatter Cloud. So Antimatter Cloud is a call cancel or a call nullifier for size 3s or greater. So it's really good in certain matchups, and it's just another way to shut the opponent down from making their plays and trying to set up a good solid board. Then I run 2 copies of Shining Rain. So this is a spell cancel or spell nullifier. When you're attacking or defending, if they have a spell to try to do something, you just use this to nullify it and kind of like shut down their play that they wanted to. Certain decks do rely heavily on spells, so you can just nullify the most important spell and then continue doing what you were doing like it was no problem. Then lastly, in my sideboard, I run 2 Dragoneraser Hidden Lance. Basically, what this card does is if it's in the soul of a Zodiac, your opponent just can't do anything in their final phase. No impacts, no impact calling, no abilities, no acts, like just nothing. Again, my sideboard is just meant to help control even more depending on how matchups go. So I don't necessarily feel like I need this in the main, which is why I run it in the side. Then I have some other options you can run if you so feel like it. You could run Future Astrology. Basically, with a Zodiac, it's just draw 2. You don't really care if you make your flag count as both, but it's just pay 1 gauge and draw 2 cards in Zodiac decks. Then you could run Eliminator Dust Remnant. So this card can only be called to your left if you have a Zodiac monster on your field, and basically he just helps protect the Zodiac from being destroyed or returned to hand. So we kind of already have cards that do that, so you don't necessarily really need to run it, but You could if you want. Then you could also run Dragonarms Gabriel Anchor. So this is just a Dragonarms version of Shining Rain. It's just a spell nullifier. So I just choose to run Shining Rain over it. You could also run Suspicious Craftsman Gara. Most of the time you're just going to be using Gara's effect to boost the crit, to try to deal more damage and close out games. The power and penetrate doesn't really matter so much because your Zodiacs inherently have penetrate, so you could use it on one of your other size zeros like Shadowscare, but most of the time you're just going to be using it for the crit on Zodiac. Then lastly, you could also possibly run the Dragonarms. Basically, if this is in the soul of a Neo Dragon and it's in battle with a size 2 or less, you can nullify its abilities. So it's just an ability nullifier. We kind of already have it. This is for size 2 specifically or less, so I'm not super thrilled on running it, but you could totally run it if you so feel like it. So that's it for my Star Dragon World Zodiac deck. The deck was a lot of fun to make. It's kind of annoying to play against due to how much you shut down your opponent. So it's not really a whole lot of fun on your opponent, especially if they don't have proper ways of dealing with not being able to attack and not being able to stand from you resting so much. It's really weak to decks that just can't be rested. So watch out for those, and then it has its obviously other good and bad matchups. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next profile.